Hey, Jen.
Hey, Dana. Hi, everyone.
Welcome to Hypnosis.
And beyond.
Today we have Chris Priebe, a hypnotist, NLP Master Practitioner, Kinetic Shift Trainer, and international speaker.
Welcome, Chris. How are you today? What brings you on to Hypnosis and Beyond?
Thank you very much. I am excellent. I'm excellent. Thank you for having me. What brings me to hypnosis and beyond? This is everything I've done has led me to this moment. As far as hypnosis goes, my journey really in hypnosis started with me going to a hypnotist for weight loss. I knew there was something that was going on inside that I couldn't quite deal with. I fought a 30, 40 pound yo-yo most of my life, and it was time to stop it. So I made an appointment with a hypnotist. I went in there and it was phenomenal. Absolutely changed my life. And it was less hypnosis than I thought it was going to be. She did some NLP techniques with me. And I remember she asked me if I had heard of NLP or if I knew what it was. And the letters were familiar, but I really didn't know what it was. And anyway, we had a great session. And what we removed from that session has been out of my life for almost 15 years now. When I came home, I started talking to my partner about this NLP that the hypnotist mentioned, and she had just been gifted a free NLP introductory weekend. So I'm like, okay, so now this thing is in my radar. It's sort of orbiting around. And so she went to it. She loved it, came back. She was completely energized. And I finally understood, what the three letters meant. It's neurolinguistic programming. And she signed up for the practitioner course and she went to that. And again, she was just fired up and I loved it. But then when she came back about halfway through the practitioner course, a lot of things that we were aligned on, she was speaking a different language. So it was a little bit strange. It was a little uncomfortable for me. And so at that point, I kind of had a choice. I was at a choice point to figure out what I was going to do. Do I still feel this awkwardness or do I lean into it and understand what it is? And happily, I leaned in. I went to a weekend introductory and was completely blown away. It was one of those moments of why isn't this taught in school? And what I found was fascinating was I went with a good friend of ours, and she sat right beside me on my right. And we went, it was the exact same course, the exact same trainer, the exact same day. I was a foot apart. And when we came home, she was in tears and I was blown away. And my eyes were completely open and she had a hard time dealing with it. It was like, which was interesting for me because it was the same information. So I was fascinated at how people can hear things or see things or experience the same thing and have vastly different experiences. So with that, I ended up going to the practitioner level myself, master practitioner. There was a hypnosis portion of it in that, and it wasn't enough. So I just started, digging in, and over the course of probably about 10 years, did some more study on my own. Went to into Toronto. I'm just north of Toronto, so I went to the Mike Mandel had brought in Freddy and Anthony Jacquin for a weekend training, and I went to that and was blown away. Joined the Mike Mandel Academy, did the architecture of hypnosis, had that, and then just kind of kept bringing stuff in and bringing stuff in and integrating it. Then I found Carl Smith and jumped in with that, and just the whole approach of where the client has the answers took a lot of pressure off me as the hypnotist, thinking that I needed to quote unquote fix somebody. I just need to help them uncover the solution that they had. And so that's what brings me here.
As far as right now, after all of what you've studied and what's brought you here, what are you doing at this moment that you're passionate about?
So right now, because I've had sort of different, I've learned here and learned there, I have this knack to be able to find a gold nugget in whatever is out there. So, and to be able to sort of synchronize different things together. And I would study, well, I would watch, masters, whether they're storytellers, whether they're speakers, whether they're hypnotists, or just anybody who's engaging. And when you watch them, some of them are so compelling. And I was wondering, how is it that somebody can relay the same information and have it be completely compelling, and somebody else just doesn't have that? So I listened differently, and I found that, that quote that says, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Well, I found that when you change the way you listen to things, what you're able to hear also changes. And what I found was something that it's calling directional language. And what it is it's a way to communicate at a deeper level. It's completely transparent, and it gets results because you're listening differently. The way when we, as people, as humans, we store things spatially. Now that could be, if we sort of close our eyes and there's a 360-degree field around us, we will store things spatially. So the things that we really like are stored in a certain spot. Things that we don't like are stored somewhere else. So we store things spatially, but that comes out in our language. So for example, if someone is near and dear to your heart, you feel that somewhere, there's a space there. If you think of somebody who you would say you want to keep at arm's length, those two distances are quite different. And then of course there's it's something as chef's kiss, like it's really close. And then again, the polar opposite of that would be, the Grinch. I wouldn't touch you with a 39.5-foot pole. How we say things indicates where they're stored in our minds. So when you listen to that, you can use that to understand where somebody's problem is, and then anywhere else is not problem. So when you move that, and directional language helps you to move that around to have someone go from problem to not problem. And that's kind of what's really got me excited right now.
So can you give us another maybe example about how you do that and how everybody could use directional language?
So if somebody comes to me, and the way that a practitioner where I would use it, I'm going to ask questions. And questions can be used in hypnosis speak to fractionate. So you can have people going in and out of trance completely conversationally. But how you listen for that is, if somebody came to me and they said, I have anxiety, it's in here. They're in the moment. They're presently experiencing that. So if I can shift that, so when you think of temporally, that is in the present. Now, we also have our other options are the future and the past. So if somebody comes to me and says, I have anxiety or I'm feeling this way, I know that they're present. And I can simply say and ask them a question, well, how do you want to feel instead? That question in and of itself is going to, in order for them to answer it, they have to move to a different time zone for that, which is like a dissociative technique. So that problem that was in the present state, they have to dissociate from that in order to either answer or consider the question I've asked. And then the questions can, ultimately, it becomes verbal fractionation or conversational fractionation, because you can ask some questions that make somebody go inwards to process it, and then other questions can bring them out. So how we use our language really does direct the client's attention for us, and how we listen will inform us as to where their problem is, and chances are where the solution is.
So is this sort of a technique that people can sort of lead and guide their client with at the beginning of the session, or is this something that you're kind of using throughout the session?
For me, it's one of those things that once I learn it, I can't unlearn it. So once you listen differently, I see it everywhere. So it's really more of a framework that almost any technique can be applied to. But I use it primarily at the beginning of a session, because when you're going to do an intake anyway. So when you can, in that intake, when you can find out where they store their problem, you can also figure out where a potential solution is. And then when you can conversationally fractionate somebody, by the time you get to whatever modality you're using, be it hypnosis, be it, NLP, whatever technique or whatever you want to do, they've already been fractionated a couple times. So we know that they're going to go deeper with each time that they go into trance. And it's completely conversational.
Brilliant. So it's like you're getting the rapport, you're building all the questioning in and what have you, and then you're also kind of guiding them into trance while you're doing these questions, really. I mean, when you talk about fractionation, so that's fascinating.
Yes, and it's so much fun, because again, when I hear it everywhere now. It's the coolest thing, because I used to, when I was starting out, not know exactly what to do. So a lot of times when the onus was on me to find the solution, that's a lot of pressure. And I don't need that pressure. First of all, the magic is in the client. The magic is always in the client. The magic isn't with me, it's with the client. And then when you can simply ask a few questions and they tell you, without telling you outright, sort of what time zone the problem is in, it's really easy to go, okay, so if the problem is in the future, if they're worried about that thing in the future, just locate them somewhere else and then ask them to feel differently, or ask them how they feel in the present, or was there ever a time when you didn't feel like that? And then if they can associate into that, when you bring them back out of, it's like a micro trance. When you bring them back out, they're coming from a different place. So it kind of goes along with the memory reconsolidation and prediction error, because they're coming back to the present from a different place, from not problem. Because if we focus on problem, all we can see is problem. But then when you can have somebody open their eyes and look around, everything that isn't problem is not problem. And that's a much better place to be.
Well, Chris, this is wonderful. How long have you been sort of developing this?
So that has really been sort of developing organically for probably 3 years. But the idea of directional language came to me easily 10, 15 years ago, with the addition of one simple word. If somebody says, I can't do that, to me, that's stopped language. That there's no movement in I can't do that. I'm stuck. But when you add the simple word yet, I can't do that yet, to me, there's forward movement in that. So I can't do that yet. Became, okay, well, is there anything else? Are there any other places where language implies motion? And for me, one of the greatest ways to stop any momentum from any conversation and completely stop the movement are the words, "I know." And it was completely apparent to me when I was at work one day. Somebody was trying to explain something to somebody else, and then the answer was, "Okay, I know. Yeah, I know." The words "I know" can be completely dismissive, but it's deceitful because they seem really, really harmless. But "I know" stops the conversation, because once you know, you don't need someone else to keep talking. So that was sort of the basis of it. And then when I started listening, again, listening different, it was, okay, wait a minute. That person is bringing somebody into an experience and then back out. Hold on a second. That's fractionation. When you put somebody into trance and you bring them back out, the next time you put them in, they go deeper. And then you bring them back out, and then the next time they're going to go deeper. It's like certain people do that, and I think it's unconsciously, or maybe not. And it was just picking up from this person and this person and this person, like, wow, there's a pattern. We're pattern matching machines, and I discovered that pattern.
I like it. So then, where you see this going, does that mean that it sounds like this is something that would be useful, not just to hypnotists, but for people who use communication in their career, in their lives, which is sort of everybody, it turns out.
Which is kind of everybody, yes. If you deal with any human, absolutely, you can use this. I use this. I sort of proved my proof of concept at with Toastmasters, a speaking group, obviously, and I used this to create a contest speech where I did nothing but ask questions. And each of those questions was designed to bring people in and out into my experience and back out and back into a vulnerable experience that I felt in my past. And then I used what I'll call a lateral question to have them go from my experience, where they're feeling sorry for me because of what I was feeling, and it was moved over to them. And the best comment I got to probably about 4 or 5 different levels in competition stage before I was done. And the last time I was in the competition, I didn't win. I didn't place first, second, or third, but I won that competition because right afterwards there was a woman there who ran over to me after I did this, and it was a 6.5 minute speech. And pardon the vulgarity, but I'm only going to do this for historical purposes. She came over to me and she looked at me and she said, "What the fuck did you just do?" I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And she said, "All I know is I was listening to you. I closed my eyes. I saw a younger version of me, and then tears started to flow." And she said, "And I feel incredible." And that was the desired outcome of that speech, was to connect with people, to see if I can do it from the stage in that sort of setting. And for me, I won that competition simply because of the reaction that I got from her. So I absolutely thanked her. I said, "Thank you so much. You just made my day." So from the stage, this is very powerful because you can engage your audience, whoever your audience is. It could be the client in front of you. It could be your spouse, your kids, or it could be a room full of people or a stadium full of people. When you can intentionally direct someone's attention through your language, they have a powerful impact.
Yeah. Well, anybody who's ever worked with you, Chris, knows that you are a wordsmith for sure. And this seems like a logical direction for things to go
Right.
in for you. And I just wonder whether there are any questions that you find yourself drawn to each time that you are engaging in this process. I know you've mentioned it's sort of become just a part of who you are now, but I wonder whether there might be any questions that people could maybe play around with in their own life.
You can use really, you can point any question at this, but if you're looking for it as in a session, a simple question of how can I help you? And then how you listen to that response will sort of dictate the next question. Again, if their problem is a present tense problem, just move it. So your next question could be, was there ever a time that you didn't feel X? Or if the problem is, I've always felt this thing, and this or my past has always bothered me. I don't feel safe. I've never felt safe. Okay. Are you safe right now? In this moment, are you safe right now? And if the answer would be yes, which of course they will be if we're doing a one-on-one session, because that's the priority is to make sure that the client is safe. When they can tell themselves, yes, I am safe right now, that sort of opens that door just a little bit to be able to to move in and then have them see that there are other options. And then of course there's always there's questions that you can aim sort of anywhere. How would you like to feel? Of course, if you're going against the negative, how do you want to feel instead? Which beauty of using questions is you can embed different things within a question, because the question will bypass resistance, because by simply asking a question, in order for someone to decide how they're going to answer, or if they do want to answer, they have to process the question. And it's in that processing where the magic happens. That's where the trance is. And it's within the processing before they go and they give you the answer. You could see like a transderivational search where their eyes are looking for the answer, but the magic really is in the processing. That's why as hypnotists we use tag questions, is it not?
Nice. See what you did
Because
there.
you need to be able to process that.
I like it. Well, I love the way that you've boiled it down to the processing is the key. That's really
Yes. Yeah.
helpful for us to understand a little bit more about how how to see this directional language. So thank you for
Yes.
clarifying that.
You are very welcome.
Well, that brings us to our next segment, which is our silly subconscious question. And
Uh-oh.
our
Bring it
question
on.
for you today, Mr. Chris Priebe, is if you could transport yourself anywhere right now, where would you go and why?
If I could transport myself anywhere right
Yes.
now, I would absolutely love to transport myself to the depths of the ocean. Because of course, if it's in my silly subconscious, I can breathe underwater now. But the idea of going somewhere that I've never been and probably could never go, except for on a podcast such as this, is fascinating. I would love to just be just surrounded by water, completely surrounded. So if I could transport myself anywhere, that would be where I would go.
Nice.
Chris, beyond what we've spoken of today, what would you like to leave the audience with?
Be curious in life and in anything. For me, what has brought me to the most enjoyable, the most important, and just the best parts of my life has been curiosity. When you know where you're going, it's okay. But for me to go not knowing what's around the next corner, that is the key for me. So be curious.
Love it. Well, it's been amazing having you here today.
Yes.
Thank you so
Yes,
much.
we can't wait. And for all our audience out there, Chris will be speaking at HypnoThoughts in July of 2026, depending on when you're watching this. Either it's coming up or it's already happened. And we look forward to many more of your talks in the future. And we'll obviously have you back. And with that, Jen,
I thank you.
what do we always say?
Peace out.
Peace out.
Peace out.